all, thank you for joining me for this session, Harnessing the Power, AEM Guides meets FrameMaker. I'll explain how AEM Guides and FrameMaker work together to create a robust data authoring workflow. Before I start, I'd like to introduce you to Sienna.
Here's the simple truth. You see all these people out there all over the world, all these billions of humans connected to their network, never stopping to consider what or who makes it all work. Maybe 1% of them are aware that we exist, though nearly all of them benefit from our relentless innovation. We are Ciena, the maker of optical and routing systems, services, and automation software for networks. So what matters most to us? For more than 3 decades, we've been connecting people to each other and enabling incredible technology experiences while never demanding any time in the spotlight for ourselves. At Siena, we see things differently, so we build networks differently. We bring humanity to innovation, and we achieve that by putting people first. People are the reason we developed our vision for the adaptive network. Because when you bring massive scale and programmability to network infrastructure, real potential gets unleashed. People are also the reason our automation software is built on a principle of openness, allowing our customers to automate and monetize their networks at whatever pace they choose. And people are the reason we invest in relationships, communities, and doing good in the world. Because personal connections and giving back have always led us to great things. To us, there's something quite beautiful about not being known or seen by everyone. The people who need to know about Siena know, and they include a clear majority of those who build the world's most advanced networks. The responsibility of making it all so seamless and reliable is ours. Dreaming up new ways to connect and communicate is all theirs. We are Siena.
Sienna is a networking systems, services, and software company. We have over 8,000 specialists around the globe, and we support approximately 85% of the world's largest service providers. My name is Susanna Carlisi. I am the lead content strategist for Sienna Global Product Documentation. I've worked in TechCom for over 25 years. In recent years, my focus has been implementing data authoring and leading the implementation of Adobe Experience Manager Guides at Siena. This timeline shows the history of FrameMaker and AEM Guides in the Global Product Documentation Group. As you can see, we have been using FrameMaker to develop technical documentation for many years. From 1992 to 2015, unstructured FrameMaker authoring enabled us to meet all our content needs. In 2015, we searched for a new way of authoring to handle customer feedback about consistency and predictability in our content, as well as the evolving need to deliver different types of documentation for different types of users for the same product. We also didn't have an easy way to take content that already existed and reuse it in a different context or product. We chose DITA for its structured and topic-based approach, which aligned with our goals. In 2016, we started on the complex task of converting existing content for thousands of pages. We worked with a consulting firm, the Content Era, to develop conversion prerequisites, requirements, and procedures. In 2017, we rolled out the conversion process, trained our authors, developed best practices for creating brand new content in DITA. In 2018, we moved most of our content authoring to DITA. During this time, I learned how to work with FrameMaker's EDDs, and I took over the template and structure development. As some authors embraced the efficiencies that modular topics and reuse enabled, it soon became apparent that managing the explosion in the number of files we were creating and managing reuse effectively required a component content management system, or CMS. At the same time, we had to address the future need for content translation. AEM Guides addressed these needs perfectly, and we rolled it out to our team in 2021. AEM Guides extended our solution and provided the team with a way to manage dependencies for effective reuse, manage versions and releases with baselines, and integrate these baselines into the translation workflow. As well, AEM Guides supports our selected data authoring tool, FrameMaker. We also developed guidelines for writing our content for translation and integrated a translation management system and the corresponding plugin into AEM Guides. So while the shift to DITA provided structure and consistent content organization, as well as reuse capabilities, we now needed a way to have a uniform writing style in our content. So we needed a way to enforce our style guide, check spelling and grammar, increase translatability, and use consistent tone of voice and terminology. So we rolled out Congre Authoring Server, which also integrates with FrameMaker. So since rolling out a DITA authoring solution, our team has also increased in size. The documentation team includes 44 specialists distributed across India and North America. The team creates technical customer documentation, which includes publications such as planning guides, user guides, installation guides, and release notes. Here is the agenda for the rest of this session. First, I will describe what the session is about and the target audience. Then I will provide a very quick overview of DITA authoring in FrameMaker. I will also provide a quick demo. Lastly, I will provide some tips for working efficiently in FrameMaker on content stored in AEM Guides. I will also provide a demo of these tips. This session focuses on the FrameMaker and AEM Guides integration features that Sienna authors use to avoid errors and optimize their workflow. This session is intended for teams already using FrameMaker and who are considering or are in the process of evaluating AEM Guides to extend their solution and to unlock efficiencies not available without a CCMS. Specifically, this session is for teams who want to continue to use FrameMaker as an authoring tool, either as a primary editor or as an optional editor, giving the authors the choice between the AEM Guides editor or FrameMaker. I will also provide a very high-level overview of the basics of DITA authoring in FrameMaker. My intent is to provide some context for those who are authoring in unstructured FrameMaker and want to see what DITA authoring looks like in FrameMaker. Even if you are using unstructured FrameMaker today and plan to move to authoring in the AEM Guides web editor, you can still use FrameMaker to dabble in DITA authoring so that you can learn about DITA prior to the AEM Guides implementation. I will now provide a quick overview of DITA authoring in FrameMaker. First, I just want to touch on some of the reasons we continue to use FrameMaker at Sienna. The FrameMaker environment was familiar, so it made moving to DITA easier and a little bit less intimidating. Also, we were building on an existing investment. We could use the structured mode of FrameMaker at no additional cost. Writers will continue to use unstructured FrameMaker anyway to either maintain existing unstructured documentation that is in the queue for conversion or author legacy content that is reaching end of life. Lastly, with FrameMaker, you can continue to publish in a similar way. So before you can start authoring DITA content in FrameMaker, make sure that the product interface is set to structured FrameMaker. Also, select the DITA version that you want to use. I've provided information here on how to open these dialogues. Those are the most basic steps that you will have to perform to set up for DITA authoring in FrameMaker. If your team wants to constrain the elements available for authors to use, or if your application includes some customizations, you will need to perform additional steps to configure these differences. But out of the box, you can use FrameMaker to author in DITA after making these two selections. Then you can create a topic, usually a task, concept, or reference topic, either by choosing the topic type from the File menu or by clicking on the topic type in the FrameMaker welcome screen. DITA is based on modular, topic-based authoring, So you can create content in discrete topics, each meant to answer a single question such as, for example, how do I install something? What are the benefits of a certain feature? Or what are the technical specifications of this product? A task might provide the steps for completing a procedure using the product. A concept might describe the different configurations a product supports. So you need to understand this information before you can perform related procedures. A reference topic might list hardware technical specifications. Reference topics are usually not read word for word, but referenced when needed. In general, in most cases, the topics are written to support the tasks and content is task-focused, but this depends on the type of content you are authoring. Once you have created and saved your topics, you assemble the topics into a deliverable using a map. You create the map from the File menu or the Welcome screen in the same way you created a topic. You save the map with a file name with lowercase letters and numbers. You can use the underscore or hyphen character, but no spaces or other special characters. Here, I want to emphasize the difference between DITA and unstructured authoring. Instead of creating a handful of large chapters for a book, with DITA topic-based authoring, you create a large collection of topics. Then you build publications by choosing topics from the collection and assembling them in a map in different combinations to create distinct user-focused content. You can reuse topics easily in this way. DITA eliminates the need to manually reformat a reused topic that is included in different positions in the map hierarchy of multiple maps. Formatting of content in the output based on hierarchy is automatically handled during publishing. That means that you aren't retagging reused topics manually with a specific heading level to set hierarchy. Instead, you use each map to arrange the topics in the required hierarchy, and all the formatting is done automatically at publish time. At Sienna, we refer to published maps as main maps, and these main maps are made up of smaller submaps organized by feature, module, or task-focused unit, a set of topics organized by function. So in this example, I'm demonstrating how the hierarchy is set in a published deliverable. Here, I'm showing 4 distinct topics that reside in separate files, and at the bottom of this slide, I'm showing how these topics are organized in the DITA map. So the first topic is at the first level, and the remaining 3 topics are nested in one level from the first topic. This is how that DITA map publishes to PDF. As you can see, the first topic is at a higher level than the topic that was nested in one level in the map. When you author topics, you aren't setting the hierarchy inside of the individual topic. Instead, you set the hierarchy using the map. Therefore, when you are writing a topic, you're really focusing on creating the content for that topic. When working in structure, you are typically adding content using the document view, and you work on the structure of the document using the structure view. The structure view shows the underlying structure of the topic, and the document view works in a similar way to the document view in unstructured FrameMaker. You also use the Elements panel and the Attributes panel to select and adjust elements and attributes. Elements are the building blocks of a structured document, and attributes are the properties associated with an element. Some elements contain only other elements for the purpose of setting the hierarchy, and some elements contain text. Here, the DL entry element, definition list entry, is a container for the DT and the DD elements, the definition term and definition description. In this example, the list of attributes is shown for the P element. The attributes panel, which is used to specify the attributes, isn't shown here, but I'll show it in the demo. You also have options for expanding and collapsing elements and the list of attributes using the arrows on the left and right sides of the element. As you move the mouse around the structure view, the cursor type changes to indicate the actions available at each location. The current insertion point is also displayed in the structure view. Once you master using the structure view to build the document structure, you will be able to set up topics very quickly. In FrameMaker, you can work in a WYSIWYG view or the XML view. The XML view shows the DITA source. As you can see, the DITA tags indicate what the content is rather than how it looks. For example, you won't see tags such as H1, H2, and so on. Instead, you see a title tag. How that title appears when published depends on the location of this topic in the context of the overall map. Now, I will show a short demo of DITA authoring in FrameMaker. First, I will create a topic. From the welcome screen, I'll select a reference topic. You will see that the structure view appears and it contains some elements or auto insertions by default. We configured these auto insertions to build a structure that we consider the most useful starting point for a reference. I will insert another section element by placing the insertion point and then clicking and selecting Section in the Elements panel. I can either double-click on Section or click once and click the Insert button. When I click on different locations in the structure view, you will notice in the Elements panel that the list of elements changes. This is because structured authoring is guided authoring, and you are presented with only those elements that are valid at the current location. These lines in the structure view clarify the element hierarchy. I will also show how you can use the structure view to set the insertion point for adding content or another element. If I click to the right of the short desk element, I can add text because text is valid here. This is a block element, which is similar to a paragraph in unstructured content. It has text, which I'll type in. If I click inside this short description, we can see the elements that are valid here. These are inline elements. They're in line with this element. I'll insert a trademark. Now you'll notice that I was prompted for an attribute, the TM type attribute. So I can click and select a value here. I will select the register trademark. If I look at the structure view, you'll see that the attribute appears under the element. If I need to change it, I can double-click to open the Attributes panel. Now let's switch to a topic that contains more content so I can show additional items. You can drag and drop content using the structure view. Now notice what happens when I hover at this location. you'll see the red outline. That means that if I drop the element here, it won't be valid. So I need to keep going until I can drop it at a valid location. And you can tell by the check mark next to the element name. You can also unwrap elements. Unwrapping is easier to explain using an example. Here, I decide that I want to remove the italics. Italics on its own is a formatting tag, so I try to minimize any formatting specific type tags. Sometimes they're useful, but I don't think it's needed here. So I will need to unwrap this italic element. Now I can't just simply delete it because that will delete the text too. Instead, I just want to remove the outer layer from the text, just like unwrapping candy. You want to keep the good stuff on the inside. So I right-click and select Unwrap. You can also wrap text or wrap content in another element. So what I'll do here is, instead of having this text directly in the DD element, definition description, I will have two paragraphs. So I'll select the first sentence and I will wrap this in a P element. Select P and then I'll select the wrap button. And I will do the same for the second sentence. I have some white space here, which I can just delete. Note that FrameMaker also includes a structured access toolbar. This toolbar allows you to quickly view panels for structured authoring and perform common functions such as validating topics. I'll click Start Validating, and this message tells me that my document is valid. You should always validate your work after making changes to a topic. Now I will review some tips for working with FrameMaker and AEM Guides. Specifically, I will review how we work with FrameMaker and AEM at Sienna. I will just start with some background or setup information about configuring the connection to AEM Guides from FrameMaker. Before you can connect an AEM repository, you need to set up the connection in the Connection Manager dialog. Some of the fields here require no explanation, such as the server address, username, and password. I will go into more detail on the name and local folder fields shortly, but for now, I will mention that if you connect to several AEM servers, make sure that the name you choose allows you to distinguish between each AEM server. Note that there are two ways to open or check out files stored in AEM Guides. You can use the FrameMaker Repository Manager panel, which is shown on the left, or in AEM Guides, you can select the file and then click on Open in FrameMaker. Using either of these methods, you edit the file in FrameMaker. What's important to understand is that when you open or check out a topic stored in AEM using FrameMaker, FrameMaker retrieves the topic from the AEM repository and downloads it to a location on your local drive. If you have checked the file out, you edit the file locally. Any changes you make are only uploaded back to the AEM server when you check the file back in. The download location on your local computer is known as the local folder. Most of the time, you are not exposed to the local folder directly. If you open a DITA map in FrameMaker, all references of the map, including other referenced maps, topics, and graphics, are downloaded to the FrameMaker local folder automatically by default. Therefore, you don't need to manually track which files and folders are referenced in a DITA map. AEM Guides automatically keeps track of all dependencies. This is a huge advantage of using a CCMS over a CMS. Tip number 1, use the auto checkout options. You can configure auto checkout options in FrameMaker to automatically check out files you open from the Repository Manager or from AEM Guides Open in FrameMaker button. Just to clarify, a file that is checked in to AEM Guides is locked and can't be modified. When you want to work on a file, you check it out to set a lock on it so that no one else can modify the file while you're working on it. At Sienna, we configure the CMS and auto checkout options as follows. Upon opening a file that's stored in AEM using FrameMaker, a prompt appears that allows the author to choose whether or not to check out the file. Setting the CMS options, as I have shown here, saves us time. This is because we eliminate the extra step of closing or opening the file each time we check in or check out. Setting the auto checkout options, as I have shown here, also saves us time because we eliminate the extra step of checking out a file separately from the step of opening the file. Why this matters? Most importantly, enabling show prompt prevented authors from working on a locked file. Before auto checkout was available, writers often opened files stored on the repository and forgot to check them out, only to discover that another writer changed the file while they were editing a locked version. Tip number 2, know what the FrameMaker local folder is and how it works. This slide describes where FrameMaker downloads files from AEM to your local computer. When you set up the connection to AEM from the Connection Manager dialog, you must enter a local folder and a connection name. It's important to understand that what you specify for these two fields affects where files are downloaded to your hard drive from AEM. You can see at the bottom of the slide that the path to the downloaded files on your computer starts with the local folder, followed by the connection name, followed by Content DAM, which is the location where assets are stored on the AEM server, followed by a language folder, if you have set up a translation workflow, and the rest of the path that maps to how the folder hierarchy of your files exists in AEM. Why this matters? So why do you need to know this if you are usually not directly exposed to the files in the local folder? Because you need to be aware that you should not change the configured local folder and connection name for an already configured connection, especially if you have any files that are checked out. If you have files checked out and you change the location of the local folder, you might overwrite updates you made and the updated files will be abandoned in the previous local folder location. I will now review details of how the local folder works. This slide will be a bit text-heavy, but these points are important to understand. For file downloads, when you open or check out a file stored in AEM using FrameMaker, FrameMaker retrieves the topic and, by default, its dependents and stores them in the local folder. What to note here is that FrameMaker downloads the files it needs to ensure that references resolve. So that includes conrefs, graphics, links. This is the default behavior. I'll talk to exceptions and options a bit later. When you check a file back in, the local updated copy is uploaded back to AEM, and the file is abandoned in the local folder until you check it out again, at which time the file is, if modified, overwritten with a fresh version from AEM. Depending on how you check in, sometimes the file is left in the local folder and sometimes it is removed. That's okay. The file is checked in and you have to check it out again anyway if you want to edit it. If you check a file out with FrameMaker, you must check the file back in with FrameMaker. It's really important to know that if you check out the file in FrameMaker and then click the check-in button in the AEM web UI, the web UI does not fetch the file from your local folder. So if you do this, the file that is checked in using the web UI is exactly the same as the file you checked out. If you use FrameMaker to author content, check-in and check-out is done in FrameMaker. The Open in FrameMaker button in the AEM web UI is used to initiate opening the file in FrameMaker, but the checkout is actually done in FrameMaker. If you have a file open already and then you check out the same file, a new copy is not downloaded over the existing file. This is actually an advantage in the case where you have started to modify a topic without checking it out first. I will talk about this a little bit later. Moving and deleting files. If you delete the contents of the local folder without checking in files, you lose that work. You might be able to recover the files from the recycle bin. Moving files from the AEM web UI does not move them in the local folder. There's no direct sync between the AEM server and the local folder. The only time FrameMaker downloads files to your computer is when you open or check out a file. So when you move a file in the AEM web UI, this could result in a situation where you have two files with the same name in different places. The file before moving and the file after moving. Only the file after moving will contain the most up-to-date information. This is not a problem because the local folder is not meant to be a complete, accurate copy of the files stored on the AEM server. It's more of a scratch pad, so you just need to keep this in mind if you're browsing local folders. We ask our authors to clear the local folder periodically after ensuring that they have no checked out files. Create new files. When you create new topics or maps, you can create them in the local folder, in a folder that corresponds to the folder that exists in the hierarchy. Upload new files immediately after you create them so that you don't forget to do so later. This is a best practice we follow for creating an individual file. That is, to upload it as soon as you create it and then check it out and add content. If the local folder does not exist, create it, and you can create it in the parent folder where it will exist once you upload it to the repository. Then upload the entire folder at once. This is a best practice when you're creating a number of files that will be stored in a new folder in the repository. Tip number 3, remember to check out a file that you want to modify. Because authors might be used to working in FrameMaker alone, they sometimes accidentally open and edit topic files from a checked out DITA map. When you check out a DITA map, topic files in that map are not checked out. Authors realize that the topic file is locked only when they can't save it. However, if they keep the file open in the FrameMaker document view, and only after ensuring that no one else has modified the file, they can still perform the checkout from the repository manager without losing the changes. The key here is to have the file open while you perform that checkout. Why this matters. Authors who are used to working in FrameMaker alone might be more likely to do this. Providing an explicit reminder of how checkouts work will prevent errors. Tip number 4, to edit only the DITA map file, use the one-level dependence resolution option. As I mentioned before, when you open or check out any file from Repository Manager, FrameMaker will download all of the file's dependents by default. You can change the default behavior to control what is downloaded using dependence resolution options. This is the guidance we provide to our authors. If you need to make a change to the DITA map file only, for example, to change an attribute in the DITA map file, use one-level dependence resolution. In any other case, especially when publishing through FrameMaker, choose multi-level dependence resolution. Why this matters? Limiting the download to first-level dependence saves time. Here's an example. For the DITA map shown on the left, select Dependence Resolution 1 level to download the main map and submaps included in the main map. Select Dependence Resolution Multi-level to download the main map, the submaps in the main map, as well as the topic files, the graphics, and all other reference content in the submaps. Tip number 5, add more favorites. The Add Folder to Favorites option in the Repository Manager panel allows authors to configure their favorite folders. Our authors use this option to navigate directly to the folder containing submaps or topics. The configured favorites, you can identify them, they're the ones that have the pushpin. The list also shows the recent files below the favorites. The configured default of 5 favorites proved too restrictive and frustrating, especially with topic-based authoring. Luckily, you can increase the number of favorites that appear in the list by updating the maker.ini file. To avoid modifying the FrameMaker installation folder, you can make these changes in the maker.ini file that is included in the user directory. Why this matters? Navigating through every folder in the FrameMaker Repository Manager can be time-consuming, and jumping to your favorites saves you time. Tip number 6, reuse with ease. Check file properties in the AEM Guides web UI. It's easy to lose track of the impact that making updates to reuse content has on your content products. Implementing best practices reduces these issues. For example, creating conrefs for content that can be used in any context. However, it's still important to track where common content is referenced, especially when reusing topics. From the FrameMaker Repository Manager, you can easily jump to the AEM web UI with a specific file in view, and then open that file's properties. The AEM Guides Properties window lists all the references for a file, so you can see where that file is used. Why this matters? Ignoring the impact of changes to shared content can decrease the accuracy of your documentation. Okay, now I will show a short demo of working with FrameMaker and AEM Guides. So I have already connected to the AEM Guides repository, and you can see the files stored in AEM Guides for the configured connection, AEM, production, ADW. Remember that this connection name is configured when setting up the connection. I have the auto checkout options configured to automatically check out a file upon open and to show a prompt. I also configured the CMS options to open a file upon checkout and close it on check-in. I will use my configured favorites list to quickly navigate to one of the topics included in our style guide. And note, you can see here that I have more than the default of 5 favorites. I have configured 10 favorites. I will double-click to open this file. And this message box prompts me to confirm the checkout. So I'll click yes. The console indicates that the auto checkout was successful. I need to refresh this folder to view a green check mark which indicates that I have checked out the file. Remember, this file was downloaded to my local computer and the edits I make are going to be saved locally. I can see this file in my local folder by right-clicking and selecting Explore. Now, if I open or check out a DITA map, all the dependents of that DITA map are also copied to my local folder so that all of the references resolve. I'll check out the DITA map that contains this topic that's in view. If I view the contents of the local folder again, now you can see that all of the other remaining topic files from that DITA map also appear in this local folder. That's because all of the map's references are downloaded when I check out the map. Going back to my DITA map, I open this file from the DITA map, and if I start to edit it, I can do so. But this topic is not checked out. When I try to save the file, I get this message stating that it can't open the file for writing. That's because the file isn't checked out. Remember, checking out a DITA map does not check out its dependents unless you explicitly use the Checkout with Dependents option. I don't need to discard my changes when I make this mistake. What I do need to do is first make sure that no one modified this file while I was working on it, and I can do this by checking the version history of the file in the AEM Web UI. Then I check out the file while it is still open in FrameMaker. Because the file is open, the version that is on the AEM server is not copied to the local folder, which is good because I don't want to lose the change that I made. Now I can make more changes or save the file and check the file back in. Finally, I'd like to show how to check where content is reused. Again, I will use my favorites list and navigate to my common folder. I'll navigate to a file, and I can check where this topic is being used by first right-clicking, selecting Open on Server. This opens the file in AEM Guides, and then clicking Properties. I can see that this file is reused in 2 maps. Also, in additional topics. It's referenced in the topics and reused in these 2 maps. That's the end of this session. Thank you for attending, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this year's Adobe DITAWorld. Thank you also to Adobe for having me back as a presenter this year again.